I know a lot of people who are still waiting for a genuinely liberal Indian politician. You have often claimed to be a liberal. Uh, but a position you took recently, I don't know what the audience here feels, but to me was deeply disappointing. You initially welcomed the Supreme Court judgment on Sabarimala's doors to be open for women of all ages. And then you recalibrate your position and you say, oh, this is at odds with democracy, because if most people don't want this, right, then I, as a representative of people, should go along with what most people want. That is going along with majoritarianism above the Constitution. That is going along with a sort of, a populist mob sentiment in some cases conceptually than the rule of law. You're actually, as a member of parliament, questioning the Supreme Court of India.
No. Well, first of all, you can. In
No,
a,
you
in a,
can
in a
question
democracy,
the
you can
Supreme
question the
Court.
Supreme Court of India.
But I don't understand your argument
Let me
being
explain.
that this represents the largest sentiment.
Let me
The
explain.
largest sentiment could be that it's okay to beat your wife. The largest sentiment could be that it's okay to rape her in the bed, to rape a woman if you're in a relationship with her. The largest sentiment could be many disgusting things.
Granted, and I'm certainly not going to give a free pass to every majority opinion in our country.
You'll
First
just
of all,
pick-
let me
You'll
react.
just pick and choose the ones that are politically expedient.
There you are. No, but jokes apart. First of all, when you say I claim to be a liberal, yes, I am a liberal. As far as I'm concerned, I find myself essentially non-judgmental, which I think is an important quality of liberalism. That is, we allow people to be who they are, think the way they think. We accept them as they are, and we respect them for who they are, as long as they don't do harm to anybody else. To my mind, that's one of the cardinal principles of what liberalism is all about. And to that degree, I have no difficulty in extending to others who may not share my beliefs the respect that is due for their sincerely held convictions, which, to my mind, is a liberal position. Number one. Number two, in the case of Sabarimala, I too initially saw it as a simple question of equal access. And on that basis, 2 years ago, when the issue first came up as the hearings were about to begin, I supported women's entry. And when the Sabarimala verdict came, I accepted it. And I even explained on local television that in many societies, change does come through the judiciary, because sometimes politically we're not ready to embrace certain changes that the judiciary can, because they're not susceptible to voters, that they can take a stand on. And the American example that's the most famous is the desegregation decision, Brown versus the Board of Education, 1954, which was passed at a time when undoubtedly there would have been 90% of the US Congress against such a decision. But now it's, of course, seen as completely normal and natural that schools should be desegregated. Now, that was my initial position. What I saw, however, was a reaction that went far beyond simple majority populism. It was a reaction in the homes, the bedrooms, the kitchens of my constituents, people I met with and spoke with every day, who felt very deeply and passionately that the issue had been wrongly framed. Their argument was, it's not about equality, because in Kerala, women do not feel unequal, or so they said to me. It is an issue of sanctity, that there is something special about the Sabarimala temple, because unlike all the other Ayyappa temples in Kerala, where women are free to go, in Sabarimala, there has been this special concept of the Naistik Brahmachari, this stories about this warrior prince who flees into the jungle to escape the attention. Women doesn't want to be seen by women of reproductive age. His soul merges into the existing hill shrine deity. This becomes the specific form of Ayyappa at Sabarimala that is worshipped by everyone but women of reproductive age. Now, many of the women, Hindu women I spoke to of reproductive age, say they themselves would not want to go because they believe in Ayyappa. They felt that by going, they would be desecrating his shrine. And as a result, they don't want other women to go whose presence would be equally, from their point of view, desecrating. Now, when I heard this, and I heard it quite widely, it wasn't as if it was one opinion versus another, I began to reflect. I had, like many others, in seeing it as an issue of equality, I had equated it to other kinds of social change, the most famous being the Dalit temple entry proclamation of 1936 in Kerala, where indeed there was a lot of opinion arrayed against it, but there was also a very strong mass movement for it. Not only were the Dalits moving forward, but people like Mahatma Gandhi had come and participated in a satyagraha for the Dalit entry into temples. And many of the leading lights of our society were divided on this. And the Diwan of Travancore, who was himself a Brahmin, actually ordered, once the Maharaja had issued the proclamation, that if necessary, force would be used to allow Dalits to get into the temples. So you had a different kind of social environment from the one around Sabarimala, where there has been no popular demand. There has never been a mass movement of women demanding entry. There has never been so much as 50 women marching, claiming the right and being turned away. There is, I'm talking before the court
but
case.
isn't the
There has never
Constitution,
been
isn't the Constitution about protecting the equality of the individual? The individual is
Correct.
the unit,
But let me...
and the right to privacy judgment of the Supreme Court actually upholds
Correct, and
that.
that's precisely
One
what the
person
majority judgment builds
is
upon.
entitled to equality. Even if I am the
But-
only person who wants to be treated equal, I am granted that equality by law.
Correct, but that's where religion comes in. And the problem with religion is there are notions of sanctity that escape rational analysis. When you speak in purely legalistic and rational terms, I'm with you. But for example, if you're talking about a secular golf club and they say people of a particular caste or a particular gender cannot enter, I can understand why. We can go on constitutional grounds and get that overturned. When you're talking about a religious practice, you are in a totally different realm. You're talking about is a religion where people believe in the virgin birth of their Godhead. There's a religion where people believe that a certain revelation was made through the Archangel Gabriel to a prophet. Similarly, there are religious practices in Hinduism that you cannot reduce now to a particular rational proposition and defend or explain. You either believe or you don't believe. Now, in our faith, we have, for example, not far from Tiruvananthapuram is Kanyakumari. There is a famous Kanya Amman temple there where men are barred. Now, there is no law that says a man cannot go, but by centuries of tradition, no men enter that temple. Now, if you were to take your constitutional principle to logical extreme, one troublemaking man can say, I want to exercise my constitutional right to enter that temple, and he destroys the special nature of that temple for millions of believers who go there. Now, does he have the right to do that? When you come to religion, you really have to ask yourself these questions, which you wouldn't ask. You can't say that by a man entering an all-women's golf club, he has destroyed that place. But in a religion, because notions of sanctity are so sensitive, you have a particular challenge.
I understand what you're saying, but I think it's a slippery slope, because when you start saying that religion is privileged over constitutional equality, that creates all kinds of tensions, because tomorrow you could have a poll in this country, and the poll in this country could have said in 1992, bring down the Babri Masjid and build a Ram Mandir there, right? So I'm not discounting that there is popular sentiment for a temple at Ayodhya. I'm simply asking you whether popular sentiment should, in fact, dictate the course of law. And these are two very different questions.
So what the position that my party in Kerala has taken and I have taken is, number one, we stand with the believers because they feel a sense of violation of their sanctity. However, we wish to pursue that through constitutional means and not through the kind of agitational politics the BJP and the Sangh Parivar have been doing, where they have been violently assaulting women who have tried to go to the temple, where they have been stoning vehicles, buses, barring police people. They have been desecrating the shrine by climbing up the 18 steps without the particular irumidi that you carry on your head. They've been out there creating an absolute political drama purely to polarize opinion and enhance support for them to show the intensity of their feelings. We don't agree with any of that. But we have said, and the Congress party did file a review petition, which is a constitutional way of getting the Supreme Court to rethink its position.
But even
secondly, if it doesn't pass, if the court still says we will not review it, this is our final view, the Constitution permits Parliament to legislate, and the nature of the legislation should actually be broader than just Sabarimala. It should be precisely to answer the question you've raised, what are the permissible limits of religious practice? I think clearly harm is one very important thing. For example, destroying somebody else's place of worship would, it seems to me, violate this unless there were an accord under which that structure could have been peacefully dismantled and relocated or something.
So you'd favor,
you'd
favor an ordinance if the court still ruled
I'm not
to
saying,
allow women to enter, allow women of all ages
I'm
to
not
enter.
saying, I'm just saying this entire issue needs much more thought, much more deliberation. The communist government in Kerala could easily have consulted stakeholders the moment the decision came from the court. They rushed to implement it to the point of putting flak jackets and helmets on women they were trying to take up to the temple. It was insanity, because no one goes to a shrine in a flak jacket and a helmet. That should not have been done. What they should have
Well,
done
no
is...
one also creates violence around the mere
Correct.
idea of a woman entering
I've
a
already
temple.
condemned the BJP who did that. But
I
I'm
mean,
just
thinking
saying...
you're condemning the BJP, but not your own. Again, it's a kind of liberal light, Hindu light, liberal light. This is the sort of dangerous ground I think the Congress is treading on. But hang on Sabarimala, you say that it's about sanctity, and I've heard a number of women devotees also argue this. But there are also writers from this state like N.S. Madhavan who have argued that actually, till the 1970s, this did not have the backing of law, right? And there is a dispute over this, that when you say this is tradition, this is age-old tradition, there's actually a dispute over how age-old this tradition is, thereby putting a question mark of this entire sanctity argument. Would you like to respond to that?
Yes and no, because the law is a slight red herring argument, because the law only came in after a court case in which the rules were made explicit. And the making of a rule, it may even have been later, you said 70s, I think it was actually 91. It was quite late that the rule was written. And that rule has been found unconstitutional. But the point is that the practice or the tradition predates the rule by a great extent. I know that certainly growing up, and I'm now in my 60s, I've been aware of this rule and this tradition and this practice, and particularly, though I didn't grow up in Kerala, on our annual holidays home to Kerala, I've witnessed villagers dressing up and maintaining their 41 days of rhythm before going on the pilgrimage. Sabarimala is a big thing, and I've seen this since my very small childhood. So it's certainly a tradition that's much older than the rule. I've also spoken to older ladies. My own mother is in her early 80s, and many others. So it's not as if for any of them this is a contestable rule. I know there are apparently a number of lapses in the application of the rule. There is one notorious incident involving a South Indian film star who in her 20s managed to get into the sanctum sanctorum. There's another case of a well-known Indian civil servant who says his mother, very much of reproductive age, gave him...
T.K. Nair,
exactly. I didn't want to name names, but gave him his initial rice feeding ceremony, so she would have been in her 20s herself at that time. And there is a story of the princess going and so on. To believers, these exceptions actually prove the rule. That is, that they would say that it's precisely that these exceptions should not have happened, we should not encourage them happening, and that they don't want them to happen again. I don't disagree with you that one person going should not destroy the sanctity of the temple. I'm quite sure that there are women under 50 who have gone on various... Because I remember a relative who went in her 40s explaining that she felt it was okay to go because she'd had a hysterectomy anyway, so she was not of reproductive age. You can find these arguments being made. And so there are people who may have violated, but as long as the general proposition is respected and upheld, people feel the sanctity of the temple is safe.
Okay.
It's just that when there is a brazen violation and people are going on the back of the Supreme Court thing and apparently being pushed there by people for a political motive, that people's back